Well, that's a beautiful view, if ever I saw one. And it's a beautiful night. You may well recognise exactly where I am. This is the outskirts of Lound Wood. This is going to be a very different night to a week ago. Look at that. If the camera's picking up anything, late evening song by a number of birds. But we have insects, we have midges flying. And that's a good sign, because a week ago I trapped at the very spot I'm going to trap at the edge of Lound Wood here, and caught just 11 moths of 6 species in pretty much 2 hours. Tonight it's going to be very, very different. It feels very, very different. The temperature has been very warm today. It's been up to over 20 centigrade today, and even on the way here the temperature gauge in the car was showing still that it was 20. Obviously it's going to cool down, but during the early morning hours it's still not forecasted to go much below 13 centigrade. So a very different night with a very different feel. No breeze at all like there was on the last trapping video from Lound Wood. So we will do better this evening, he said, hopefully. I think all moth trappers use one of these for 10-15 minutes or so before they switch the light on. Catch those dusk flying species which you don't always get attracted to the light. There are a few moths on the wing, but nothing out of the ordinary so far. But you never know. Always worth a wander round with a net. She's a lovely lass. Well, we're off and running. The temperature at a rather sultry 17 centigrade. The perfect evening. This will be very, very different to the last trapping session here. Well, just past 2200 hours, 10 o'clock, and the number of species has just hit double figures, with a couple of lunar marble browns which have just arrived at the light. The sky is now pretty much black, and so the number of moths coming in will increase, and hopefully the number of species. A lot of insect activity at the light. There's a few bugs, but lots of diptera. But new moths for the year this evening so far, one of which is flying around there is brimstone. Also had rivulet and common marble carpet, all new for the year. It's all getting better from now on, and there's been such an improvement in the last few days, and that's coincided with a period of fine weather that we're having at the moment, and that's going to continue for a few more nights, so we may be trapping again in the next couple of nights. More species continue to come in, but I'm just having a little wander. So much kneeling down, it's not always great for the knees. I know many people like to have like a deck chair and sit in that, but I can never do that. So poor knees it is, but that's the overall picture. Some people wonder why I don't go into Lound Wood more regularly, and I could have gone right into the centre this evening, but I do like it on the outskirts here. A lot of moths fly up and down the edge of the wood and along that hedgerow that you can see at the back of the light. Moths, especially migrants later in the year, are attracted into this corner if they're coming in from the south or the southwest, and so they pick up the side of Lound Wood and hit the light. That's the theory anyway, and it has worked in practice, I'll be quite honest. It's worked brilliantly. This is a really good site, and it's high up as well, but I may well go into the centre of Lound Wood at some time, maybe in June or July, but I like this little spot here, I must admit. Plus, when it's light, it's a cracking view to gawp at. Now, despite the fact that there are quite good numbers of moths, lots of insect activity, as you can see on the sheet now, there's nothing new that I've not showed you before, so instead of doing some individual species, we'll just have a quick scenic tour, so to speak. Top left hand corner of the box, which holds the light, is a waved umber, one of two waved umbers that are in. Beautifully marked waved umber. I will put photos in so you will have something to look at other than what you're seeing now. But you can see a number of green carpets. There's at least 3 green carpets here just to the left of the clock cum thermometer, although don't go by the time on the clock, it needs resetting. It's worked surprisingly well actually in sub-zero temperatures as well, and over the years been kept outside in the shed and always works. Batteries every 4 or 5 years or so. Had it a long time, but it serves the purpose. But as you can see, it's a number of green carpets. The moth here doesn't look much, and that's a dark barred twin spot carpet. It's one of the moths that I don't like writing down because it's, well, it's quite a long name, so it involves a lot of writing. I could just put DBTSC, but I don't like to abbreviate. So there's 3 of those in. There's also red twin spot carpet in, which is very, very similar, almost identical. It's almost like a red form of dark barred twin spot carpet, and there is a red form of dark barred twin spot carpet to make things more complicated, or potentially complicated. You may well have just seen a small tortrix that's just come in and gone again while I've been rattling on, and that was probably, it may well come back, but it was probably Capua vulgana again, but I can't be sure because I didn't see it well enough. But lots of activity, still lots of flies coming in. but good numbers of moths, and we're on to about 20 odd species now. Pale tussocks in, orange footmans in, pale prominent. What else is new? Least black archers, Chinese character knotgrass. So we're doing alright. Flame shoulder, the first flame shoulder, so there's a number of new species for the year that's turned up. I'm surprised at the amount of insect activity that there is, and yet that shouldn't be really, because of the daytime temperatures. Lovely day today, blue skies, warm sunshine. Consequently, lots of invertebrates out and about now. Lots of insects, lots of caddisflies, lots of crane flies, and good numbers of moths. We're on to 23 species now. Green carpets are still coming in. How long I stop here for, I have no idea actually. Tempted to continue to stay. Sometimes I find it better, at least for an enthusiastic point of view, when you do trap, you trap less, but not as long, maybe 2, 3, 4 hours rather than the whole night, which is something never really done anyway. But by just trapping for a few hours, you get a feel for what's about. You're also not taking moths out of the system, so to speak. They're able to go about their sort of nightly business and to breed, and that's what we all want. We don't want to take moths away from breeding at all. And so that's why Dillis and I never trapped for any real length of time on any one particular session. That was very rare, to be honest. But it also helped with the enthusiasm. It made you enthusiastic to trap for consecutive nights or a couple of nights later, rather than using all that enthusiasm up probably in 1 or 2 nights. We used to trap a lot. And sometimes, if it becomes too tiring on a night time, once you've packed everything away, because you have to factor that in, it's not just the actual trapping time, it's getting everything ready, getting it all in the car, driving to your chosen site, setting up, trapping, packing away, back into the car, driving away from site and back home. By the end of the night, you more or less took up most of the night, if not all of it. And by just trapping a little bit less, it keeps the enthusiasm. At least it always has done for me. But it's nice to see the complete reversal or changes in fortunes from a week ago. I'll try and hold this steady, but this is the pale prominent that's in huge palps on these, and that makes them instantly recognisable when they just first arrived and flying around, because the palps stand out. And this is actually a female. You rarely get females at light, but she's settled down. Very attractive moths, beautifully marked and quite variable in those markings, but it's the palps under the head that are the feature of pale prominent. Quite an exceptional thing. There's 3 species of moths here, which represent different sort of flight times through the spring period. In the foreground here In the lower left of the picture we have a lunar marble brown. Now these are becoming fewer, and maybe in a week or so here in Nottinghamshire they'll be done and dusted for another year. And then, representing the new kids on the block, so to speak, if you trap now, there's a good chance that you'll see this little beauty, which is the one in focus in the centre, and that's a Chinese character. This one is actually a female, so quite a good size, although they are only small, but very unique among our Lepidopterous fauna. Very different shape and markings that make it appear like a bird dropping. Beautiful little moth. I like Chinese character. And then lastly, in the background, a moth that will become a familiar favourite over the next couple of weeks, and then later again in the year, and that's of course is a green carpet. So 3 different species there in the same shot, and representing this period of the spring. Here's an old favourite of mine and of this channel, because part of the reason for doing these videos is to encourage people, newcomers into the hobby, people who maybe have perhaps thought about wanting to trap moths but never really gone about it. And if ever a moth can instill a yearning or to encourage somebody to trap moths, then it's this species. It has everything. It's very common and it's absolutely beautiful. Brimstone really lives up to its name with the beautiful brimstone coloration, and we're looking at the underside of the moth here. They do eventually sit with the wings open. Either way, it's beautifully coloured, and this is probably going to be one of the first moths, or first nice moths, that anybody traps for the first time. It occurs in gardens. It's very common everywhere. I remember rearing these or netting these on the street under the light of the sodium lights when I was considerably younger than my advanced age now. And I reared them in jam jars, as was customary in my day. Everything was reared in jam jars. You pestered your mother for a jam jar to put something in. And a beautiful moth. Say, if this moth was rare, everybody would be screaming and shouting about it, but because it's so common, if you're an experienced trapper, you'll barely give it a second glance. Yet it deserves far more than any second glance. It's a beautiful moth, the brimstone. The moths are continuing to come in. Just had scorchwing drop in. Scorchwing is one of my favourite moths of all time, and I think it's certainly one of the most beautiful that we have here in the UK. Always nice to see one of those. I remember seeing my first. I was astounded to see such a beautiful moth. But we've had white pinions spotted, also, yeah, white spotted pug. But overall, there's been hardly any micros, just a handful of 5 species, that's all. I expected a lot more, and there's an older moth that's just dropped in. Now that is something. Well, here's that older moth, an absolutely beautiful moth. It really is. It's very different to any other notchweed that we really have, at least here in Nottinghamshire. It's a beautiful, beautiful moth. The caterpillar of this is not what you would expect, and is even more striking and very unique in UK fauna. But I've had to look up the status of this moth here at Eakin, and I was quite surprised to find that it has been recorded here before. I can't remember recording it, and I certainly know that it'll be a good few years ago. But an absolute beautiful moth, made up purely of greys and light browns of various shades, and there is nothing really else that's like this. It's a beautiful moth. If you trap this, you'll be quite excited, especially for the first time. I've had this at home, and I remember it being a really good record. This was a moth that I wasn't expecting at home, so it can turn up in your suburban garden. It's an absolute beauty. Do love alder moth, and I'll put a photo in of the caterpillar here, because as I've said before, with some species, some caterpillars give away what they're going to turn into, but the caterpillar of the alder moth certainly doesn't. Well, it's 12:15, so we've done 3¼ hours, and I'm very, very happy with the moths and range of species that I've got. I've got a couple more just to write down, and then I think it's time to back up, because it's always another night.